Welcome to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Scott Nichols.
My name is Rod McCall. Dang, you caught me by surprise on that.
And I hope you will, forgive me for taking the lead on that one.
I don't know, man.
I really threw you for a loop.
You did. You caught me by surprise. Oh,
Quite intentionally, right?
Well,
I mean, that was your thing.
Well, no, it's fine.
Hopefully you'll forgive me on that one.
Well, I don't know. Depends on,
We'll see what people say.
Well, or what bribes you provide.
I mean, who knows, right? Could be a lunch in your future at some Mexican place.
Ooh, I'm all in.
I know how you like Mexican.
Yes, give me some queso. Maybe with a little beef in there.
Right.
But
you ever mess up?
On a regular daily basis?
On a daily basis?
Oh, God, yes.
I mean, I guess I do too.
I mean, it depends on what we're talking about, but yeah, I mean, crying out loud, if it didn't happen so often, it would be awkward.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever really mess up where you feel like you really need to apologize and you're just kind of like feeling crummy about it and you don't really know if the other person's going to forgive you? I mean, it's kind of eating away at you.
Yeah. Now yes, that doesn't happen on a regular daily basis, but there are times where, yeah, people have done things to me that hurt me.
Yeah.
And not necessarily physically, but emotionally or spiritually.
Sure.
And I will say that it's hard to forgive.
It is.
I have learned the hard way that forgiveness is not, the forgiveness is for me. That when I forgive them, I'm giving myself peace.
Sure.
And when I don't forgive, when I hold that grudge, well, then I'm allowing them to have power over me. And I mean, okay, one of the hardest things for me to do was to forgive Eric's mother for what she did. And I could have held on to that anger.
Yeah.
And I think people would justify and say you're okay in holding that anger. But I watched her over many years use anger as a warm, comfortable blanket for herself.
Sure.
And it created a lot of problems for her. And she thoroughly thrived on hatred and holding a grudge.
Yeah.
And I watched it destroy her. And I knew I did not want to be like that. And so for me, I'm going to forgive you.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing it more for me, for my mental health and to not allow you to have power and control.
I think there is a two-side thing to this, right? So
okay.
There's when I'm going to say I'm sorry, I'm really hoping that the other person's going to forgive me.
Okay.
And then, but I'm also like I'm going to screw up. I'm going to hurt somebody, and so I'm hoping that they're going to forgive me.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that when I need to, they're going to hope that I'm going to extend forgiveness. I mean, like there's a give and take.
Sure.
We can't just be the ones who do all the forgiving and never get any forgiveness. And we can't be the ones who just always say, I'm sorry, and are looking for all the forgiveness. I mean, you could be a victim in that way.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to make yourself into that. So I think, what is forgiveness, right? What forgiveness is not necessarily just excusing or minimizing something that somebody's doing to you.
Okay.
Right. It's deciding to let go of that, right? Deciding to let go of it and create some emotional healing for yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe for your family. Of course, if somebody's repetitively hurting you, like in your situation previously, I mean, that requires some serious help, right?
True.
And obviously that didn't end well, but, forgiveness is an important part of that relationship, right? So, I mean, the title of the episode here we have is this one phrase, the key to saving your relationships, right? Saying, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And then the other person forgiving.
Well, I think
those two things together are what bring healing and growth in a relationship.
You've got to mean it. I know that growing up, my mom or dad would say, all right, well, apologize. And I'm sorry. No. Like you mean it. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't.
But that was just like you mean it. That wasn't you actually meaning it.
Okay.
Say it like you mean it.
Yes. Yes.
Actually mean it.
Yes.
Right. And unfortunately, you can't just tell somebody, say it and mean it.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes it's a process. You have to come to that place of forgiving.
Yes.
I mean, somebody didn't just tell you, forgive your ex-wife for what she did, right? I mean,
True.
And you're just like, okay, I forgive her.
No.
You can't do that. It's a process.
That is correct. And it, but my point was, when you say you're sorry, you need to actually mean it.
Mm-hmm.
Saying the words without the meaning and commitment behind it is worthless. So
I think it's interesting that, every religion in the world has forgiveness as a, one of its tenets.
Yes.
That it's a thing because it takes that forgiveness takes away the teeth of whatever was happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes it away and it lowers the stress and it reduces, that stress in the relationship, making it automatically improve.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's kind of where I was going with before, that if you allow that person if you still hold that grudge, well, then you're giving them power over you. And it makes it kind of hard to move on, to move forward.
Yeah.
And like I said, I watched it. Eric's mom she could not forgive.
Yeah.
You slight her, and she held a grudge forever.
Mm-hmm.
And and I literally watched it eat her away, destroy the good parts of her. And it got to where she was a very unrecognizable person.
I could see where that would drive somebody to crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're just consumed by it.
Well, and there's some research out there that does suggest it will have a huge negative impact on your mental health.
Right.
I mean, and it will drive you crazy. And I think that was part of her problem, was that she had so many years of hatred towards so many people.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I did not want to live like that.
Yeah.
And so again, if I slight you, I'm going to apologize and I'm going to mean it. I am sorry that I did that. That was not my intention.
Right.
So forgiveness, I think, is a key component to, you're right. You're going to screw up. You're going to do something. You're going to piss somebody off. But if you say, hey, I'm sorry.
Right.
And with feeling and
so a lot of people think that's a weakness, right? But I don't think so, right? I think that apologizing and seeking that forgiveness only strengthens the relationship. It's not a weakness.
Yeah.
It doesn't put you in a place of weakness necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're going to be like in a victim mentality, right, where you're just going to say I'm sorry to everything.
Yes.
Right? I'm sorry. I didn't put the remote in the right place, or I'm sorry I didn't,
I'm sorry.
do silly things.
Yes.
Right? Like you can't apologize for everything. That phrase "I'm sorry" shouldn't just be like the first two words that come out of your mouth every time you see somebody.
Thank you. Yes. Right? Yes.
But when used appropriately, I think that's, and then I think that forgiveness will be extended, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you just say it to everything, then some people probably aren't going to take you seriously.
Well, there you go. It's kind of like the boy who cries wolf. If you say it without conviction, if you say it without meaning, and you say just the words, then people they lose their effectiveness,
right?
And it's pointless to say I'm sorry.
But these are two phrases that I'm sorry and I forgive you are two things that every relationship should have in their conversation. There's always going to be a time at some point where you're going to hurt the other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're all human. And if there's one thing that humans are really good at, it's hurting another human.
Sad, but so
emotionally,
true.
right? Or physically. And it's just wrong. And we need to apologize for those things.
Well, again, when you can, it's a free, you're freeing yourself. When you can't, when you don't, you can get so wrapped up in that anger.
Yeah.
And it presents itself in so many negative ways.
Yeah.
I mean, because not only that, you carry that with you into other relationships.
Yep.
And it can lead to depression, irritability,
yep,
anxiousness, and it lowers the value that you have in your future relationships. It makes it hard to develop those strong connections that we need, because as humans, we are a social people.
Right.
And if you can't have good, positive relationships, then it has a huge negative impact on your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I saw this with Eric's mother, and I watched her slowly I don't want to say de-evolve, but she delved into this world and it just consumed her.
Yeah.
And it made her an unrecognizable person.
Yeah.
And if you want that warm blanket around you of hatred and misery, well, I can't stop you, but I don't have to join you.
Well, there's some evidence to suggest that, when you do forgive, you are you'll be healthier.
Okay.
Physically.
Okay.
Right. That you'll actually have, you'll have healthier relationships. You'll have less anxiety, less stress, less hostility, you'll have, lowered symptoms of depression. So if you're forgiving, that's a good thing. It lowers your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a stronger immune system. You're probably not as susceptible to things like colds and stuff like that. I mean, there's a physical aspect that there's a connection to your emotional state. If you're not a forgiving person, right, you can have struggle with all those things. And if you do forgive a lot, it just changes your mindset, and guess what? Your brain controls pretty much everything in your body.
Oh,
and so
yes,
if you've got some control over that, other things tend to do better.
Well, I totally agree. And one of the things that I'm a firm believer of, again, this was the behavior that we as adults demonstrate can be a great role model for our children.
Excellent, right?
Yes. And I do this a lot in the classroom. If I make a mistake or I jump to a conclusion on a kid, I'm going to look at, okay, my bad. I am sorry.
Yeah.
And apologize to them and show them that, okay, I made a mistake. I'm going to apologize to you, and we're going to move forward to this. I think by doing this, you're role modeling a positive behavior that can have long-term positive benefits in that child.
Yeah.
And so that if they can see you as an adult making a concerted effort to apologize, to forgive, then it makes it easier for them, hopefully, to repeat that to the other people in their lives.
And I think that's really important, that just to recognize that kids are that kind of blank slate where they're going to decide how to live their lives and the things that they're going to do and the way they're going to act based on what they see.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they learn, right?
Well, they truly are sponges.
Yeah. And they learn those things because of what they see around them. And so, that's how they learn to act. Mm-hmm. And so if you are, being disrespectful and, critical of other people and all those things, like, they're going to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you express forgiveness and practice that with them, then they're more likely to have a lower anxiety and, deal with things better and be that same kind of a person to other people. So the change starts with us, right?
I'm not trying to go super religious with this statement, but growing up Catholic, we would say the Lord's Prayer. And you know how, They say that when you're happy, you sing the song lyrics.
Sure.
When you're sad, you actually listen to the song lyrics.
Yeah.
In the divorce group that I was part of, going through that divorce, at the end of every meeting we would join in a circle, hold hands, and say the Lord's Prayer. And I can remember the first time, my first meeting, and I had this feeling every single time we would say this.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a part in the Lord's Prayer where it says, God will forgive you as you forgive others. And again, I had said the Lord's Prayer my entire life, but hearing it that particular first meeting resonated with me about the power of forgiveness, and it helped me push the idea that you need to forgive. If you want God to forgive you, and whatever God you pray to, and you're right, a lot of pretty much every major religion out there says or pushes or promotes forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
If you want your God to forgive you, well, don't you need to forgive those in your life around you for what they have done to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would take that a step further and say, part of the idea is that in that case, right, like God has forgiven you. And so who are you to withhold forgiveness from others?
And yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can't do that. You have to extend it. It was given to you, so you need to give it to others.
Which is why modeling it for the children that are around you, your immediate children, or in our cases with the kids that we work with, by modeling and demonstrating that, hopefully we can deliver that message not just verbally, but demonstrate it as well.
Right. And, aside from religion, I mean, there's lots of things historically about religion that, it was used in different places to kind of bring order to society and things like that. I mean, there's a lot like recitations, it changes your thinking. It calms your mind. It does, it's like meditations in some religions, right? Mm-hmm. Prayer, all those things, help you in some way. But this idea of forgiveness is just a really important part of that, because it does lower the conflict between us in relationships.
Yeah, and it goes back to one of our tenets. If you don't go home, you don't want to be at home or around the people at home if there is a lot of hostility, a lot of conflict. And if you can help ease some of that conflict by apologizing and forgiving, look, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry for our fight that we had.
Yeah.
And I forgive you for the things you said, and I hope you forgive me for the things I said, because what I said wasn't what I was really thinking and feeling.
So I think modeling that and helping kids grow up with that idea of those two phrases being important, right? Like, I'm sorry and I forgive you. And having them use that is really important. Having them hear it, having them receive it and give it. Those things are really important. And I think that this is maybe even especially important in like a blended family.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's lots of conflict typically in a blended family.
Yes.
It's just a more complex environment.
Yeah, because whether you are the parent or the bonus parent, there is so many options and opportunities for misunderstanding, for angry statements to come from all involved. I mean, crying out loud, I have been part of a blended family for a long time.
Yeah.
And I will say that I have initiated, sadly, more than my share of conflicts, but I try to model to my stepchildren that I am sorry,
right,
and that I want to let them know that I don't know if you get it everywhere, but I'm going to show you that this is what my version of compassion is, right. And I'm going to show you what being an adult means in my understanding and my role as an adult.
Yeah,
you can accept it, you can reject it, but I'm going to do my best, to model it. And I hope that they take that with them. And I hope that in their adult relationships,
right,
that they are able to model that.
Yeah.
So
I think that term "I'm sorry" too is really important. Like there should be, it's all a process, right? So when you say "I'm sorry," it shouldn't be like, "Well, I'm sorry I got caught."
yeah.
Or "I'm sorry you feel that way."
Yeah.
Right. Or anything. No, you need to own the whatever it is you're sorry for as being something that you did that you can control and that you have the power to change in the future, right? Like, and not do it again. Religion typically calls that repentance, right? Like you turn away from that and you don't do that thing again. And so, when you say I'm sorry for something, it should be, I'm going to endeavor to not do that to you again. And so, you receive the forgiveness and you consciously make a change in your thinking to try not to do that again. Does that mean you're going to be successful? No, it's a process, right? Like you might do it again.
Well, and I think that one of the things that plays into that is using I statements. And I had never appreciated the value of an I statement until we were until I was part of the divorce group. And it was part of what we were suggesting. Don't tell people what to do. Don't you instead say, well, this is what I did. This is how I felt. This is what I experienced. And I've gotten to where over the many years since my first introduction to the divorce group, I try and use that in a lot of the things that I say.
Yeah.
And I attempt to use I statements when communicating what I hear, what I feel, what I experience. And I truly do believe it makes a huge difference in reducing conflict, but also helping create understanding that this is what I heard you say. I know this may not be exactly what you did say or what you intended to say, but this is how I heard it. This is how I experienced it. This is how I felt when you said what you said or did what you did. And in the process, it creates, at least I think it creates in the other person a better understanding of why you reacted the way you did.
And I think that's important because we always, you have that saying, perception is reality.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so whatever you say, whatever you do, I perceive, the way that I perceive it affects me, right? Like, so I have a filter and whatever you do comes through my filter and it says, oh, this is what that meant. And maybe that's an attack on me.
Okay.
Even if you didn't intend it that way.
Sure.
And so having the other person understand what you perceived so that they can say, well, that wasn't what I meant. Right. And, they don't necessarily need to be sorry for that. You may not have to be sorry for that because you don't want to be sorry for the other person's perception. But maybe the person who perceived it that way can be like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that it was that way. That that's what you meant. I didn't hear it that way.
And that's, again, it's part of that communication. And whether you're talking with your spouse or your child, I think being able to help them understand where you're coming from is critical. And that's truly what I have come to understand, the value of I statements.
Yeah.
And it has helped me in my relationships and my ability to communicate with the people that I like the most.
And keeping that communication open, right? Sharing that perception of what you think was said, with the way that you heard it, I think is important too, because that helps you understand your partner's filter or the other person in the relationship, what their filter is. And it might reframe how you communicate with them.
Absolutely.
And that, that's just going to be another healthy change in the relationship. And it's not to say like walk on eggshells or anything like that, right? But
sure,
if you understand the other person better, then you know better how to communicate with them the first time instead of having miscommunications.
Well, you know what their triggers are. Yeah. You know better ways to approach a topic that might be a hot button issue for them. And you're absolutely right.
But I think it doesn't necessarily mean that we're just going to ignore the behaviors.
Oh, absolutely. Totally
Right.
different
There's
conversation.
definitely behaviors that need to be addressed. I'm sorry. I forgive you. And then we're going to change how we do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have limits. You got to have expectations. You got to have all those things that you should be discussing before you even get in a relationship, but has to continue because it's all a process.
It's those boundaries. And when we talked, that was also part of our divorce group, healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And when you can have healthy boundaries of this is acceptable and unacceptable ways to communicate, behaviors, actions, whatever it might be, whether we're dealing with a kid or our spouse, it's all, I am a firm believer that boundaries play a big part. And reinforcing those boundaries, and again, going back to using those I statements,
Sure,
can make our relationships, well, more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been with my wife for almost 34 years. Married, in our 33rd year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know her pretty well. I think she knows me pretty well. And you know what? We still have to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And we still have to say, I forgive you. It's a process. And you're never going to reach perfection.
Oh, no.
Right? It's just not going to happen. So you're going to have to continue to do that. So the sooner that we realized that, and the sooner that we were able to practice that, the better off we were. Right? If you fail to do that, if I failed to do that initially, I think probably by the second year of our marriage, we would have been filing papers and been done. I truly think that.
Well, and the idea of perfection is, it's an unrealistic expectation.
Mm-hmm.
You can strive for perfection, but the idea that you're going to achieve perfection is unrealistic. And I think that sometimes even our Hollywood driven society pushes the idea of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, if we buy into that, then we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
the bottom line is you have to address the painful issues.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say, I'm sorry. You have to forgive, and you have to find ways to move past it and not repeat it.
Oh, yeah. Because it is so easy to stay in that comfort zone of anger and hatred, to holding that grudge. I mean, I understand its allure, why people stay that way, why they will not readily admit, I forgive you.
Yep.
Because it's just so easy to stay there, because it makes you vulnerable when you say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And when you offer up that forgiveness, if you feel like, I don't know, I don't understand entirely why people don't forgive, but if it makes you're going, well, I feel vulnerable if I forgive. Well, okay, maybe you are feeling a little vulnerable, but at the same time, you're surrendering their power over you.
Yeah.
And if that can also be understood, then maybe it can help combat that sense of vulnerability you feel.
Yeah.
But I get the allure, but it's false.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I just think that, forgiving, we were talking about that with children, right? I mean, that's important, right? You're creating a legacy. What is your legacy going to be? True. Is your legacy to your children going to be fighting and animosity and conflict and, all the negative things?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it going to be forgiveness and compassion, understanding, right? What's it going to be? We have to make that decision, because it's going to be one of those.
Well said. I agree with that. I had not thought about the concept of legacy, but you're right. What are we going to share with our children, teach to our children?
We know it's one of those because we all have the things that are like, well, my parents did this that was terrible.
Yeah.
Right? The reason I'm screwed up here is because of that thing that my parent did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to do that thing with my kid, or whatever, right? We have these critiques, and so, like, how long do you want your critique list to be?
True. Very true.
I want mine to be short.
Well,
as short as possible, right? Like, I know that there's some things that I messed up on, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, I'll leave that to my kids to decide. But, you know, you want to share that compassion and try to bring that child to some success in other relationships. And that's not going to come through contempt.
No,
it's going to come through compassion.
I think you want to set them up for success, not for failure, and demonstrating and role modeling good, healthy, positive behaviors are going to give them many more opportunities for success.
So definitely that phrase, I'm sorry, is a key phrase in relationships. And, you know, the other person using that other phrase, I forgive you, is really important as well. And so I hope that, given that we started out this podcast with me jumping in to steal your opening, I hope that I'm really sorry for that. I know you love your opening.
Not a problem.
I just want to say, I hope you can forgive me. And
absolutely.
Also that my opening is nowhere near as good as yours. And so you can trust that I will take my sorry to heart, and in the next podcast, you will do the opening.
Not a problem.
It's way better when you do it.
Well, maybe it is, and maybe it's not, but either way, not a problem. It's not an issue. So I forgive you.
All right.
For any slight that you may think you have created. So.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right. Well, then I guess we'll call it a day. And
excellent. Lunch is on the way.
All right. Perfect. I can't wait. I'm starving. So.
All right.
Until next time, I'm Rod.
I'm Scott.
See ya.
Bye-bye.